a DAO could be the owner of a rare copy of the U.S. Constitution.
80% of the money was raised in the last 48 hours, and there was this crazy auction going back and forth.
The United States Constitution at $41 million. Sold $41 million, paddle 411.
Outlets like the popular crypto news site CoinDesk incorrectly reported that ConstitutionDAO had won. Today it was revealed that the winning bidder was Chicago hedge fund billionaire Ken Griffin.
It's been almost 4 years since ConstitutionDAO made crypto history by showing more than 15,000 strangers on the internet can come together to raise millions of dollars to do anything they want. In this episode, we catch up with ConstitutionDAO's co-founder.
Hi, I'm Graham, and I'm the founder of ConstitutionDAO.
To chat about everything that's happened since and whether crypto has changed for the better. And I'm just kind of curious, as you've watched this play out, what your thoughts are on kind of the differences between what you did then and Memecoins now.
I would say inside me, there are two wolves, Zach.
Today's episode is brought to you by Stacks. Bitcoin's $1 trillion potential is untapped. Stacks unlocks it. Convert BTC to SBTC and earn up to 5% APY in Bitcoin. No custodians, just trustless DeFi. Your Bitcoin working harder. Bet on Bitcoin's future now. All right, here we are with a man who's made history in the world of DAOs, in the world of community, Graham Novak, the co-founder of ConstitutionDAO. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Zach.
I'd be remiss if I didn't now add that you are now building also in still the world of DAOs, I would say, at Mezzanine, and we'll get into that in a sec. But first, it's been almost 4 years since ConstitutionDAO completely changed, I think, crypto, and that's not an overstatement at all. I think you and I have talked about this, but ConstitutionDAO is actually kind of what made me want to get into crypto and into DAOs. I think it was revolutionary, so congrats to you first off for that. But now that we're 4 years removed, I think it's a cool time to have a conversation about what it sparked, what it changed. Now with Memecoins, what your thoughts are on that. But for those who somehow do not know or may have forgotten, let's go all the way back to the days of ConstitutionDAO, if you want to.
Yeah, absolutely.
What was it like back then? Take us back to day one or even before day one where this idea blossomed.
Yeah, so first I have to say the whole thing was a fever dream.
Yeah.
It was only 1 week from start to finish. From the night we hosted the kickoff call to the auction itself in New York City was exactly 1 week. So it's an extremely condensed period of time.
Yeah.
And we didn't sleep much. Everyone's moving constantly, nonstop. You know, a million conversations are happening. So it's absolutely a blur. The whole instigation of it was extremely coincidental. I was working at an investment fund, 28th Street Ventures. I was running their crypto portfolio, doing some work with them on the private equity side of things. And a friend of mine from college was working at an auction house and follows auction house news. And she shared this article to a group chat and jokingly saying, hey, you know, who wants to buy me an early Christmas present? And it's this Reuters article, this Constitution for sale. I was like, the original Constitution from the Constitutional Convention. There's like 7 of these things.
Yeah.
And all of them are in the Smithsonian and this National Archives. And there's one that was in private collection as far as we knew. And I'd been researching DAOs. I was really fascinated by Open Law, which became like Tribute Labs by Aaron Wright. And they'd had Shark DAO and a couple others that had pulled together money and were buying things like NFTs. So when I saw this article, I was like, we could totally launch a DAO to buy the Constitution. So I messaged my buddy Austin Kane, kind of sent him an article. I was like, we should launch a DAO to buy the Constitution. And it all kind of snowballed from there.
Yeah, and back then, I think a lot of like infrastructure hadn't really been built, and we're going to get into that because maybe that's a good thing that it has been built now, maybe not so much, depending on what you think about Memecoins. But in terms of then executing on the idea of like, okay, what is this going to look like? You guys used Juicebox back then to kind of kick this off, but just saying you want to buy the Constitution versus like actually getting enough money to do so. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you had like an idea of like what you would need to raise. How did you like track what that might be? Yeah,
so the article had like an estimated auction price for the document. I think they said in there that they think this thing will auction for $10 to $15 million, which sounded really absurdly low to me.
Yeah.
And just knowing what was happening in crypto fundraising and ICOs and all these things, I was like, we could definitely raise that much money. So we used Juicebox as the smart contract. Essentially, people would put in Ether, they would get back out people tokens, and that's what allows us to kind of track and measure, how much money is coming in, what are the actual real contributions. And we thought, if we can raise $15, $20 million, we've got a really good shot at buying this thing.
Yeah, I was reflecting on that too, because was that originally part of it? I can't remember if the people token was part of it publicly or if that came out after.
Yeah, no, it was publicly part of it from the onset,
okay,
but in a very low profile way.
Yeah.
See, the way the mechanism for the smart contract works is this. If you've got one Ether or any fraction of an Ether, you put it into the smart contract and you get back out 1 million people tokens.
Yeah.
And the idea is that it acts like a receipt. And by receipt, I mean, it says, hey, I put something into this and I've got a proportional total of all the contributions that were made to this thing.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, if we're unsuccessful, spoiler alert, we were, then all the money's back in the smart contract. And you can take those tokens and you can redeem them against the smart contract and get back 100% refund. And that's how it was designed.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think I don't even. That's what I was like thinking about in my head. I was like, I don't even know if I remember, because for me, and this is also the spoiler alert in terms of like I threw my money in too, because it was just kind of one of these things where it was like, do you want to be a part of it or not? And it wasn't. And I think this is kind of the main differentiator. If you were to ask me what has changed over the last 4 years, is like the idea of being a part of a community versus I'm here to make money by flipping this coin was like very different than it is now, at least in crypto. Maybe not for people who are drawn back into this, I hope. But like the idea of it in crypto has gotten, I think, a bit darker when it becomes solely the money piece or the token piece. But at the time, it was definitely not that. It didn't seem like it was that.
Yeah, it definitely felt like a big community thing. And I think everyone I talked to just wanted to be a part of it because they're like, this feels different, this feels unique. I just want to participate in some way.
Yeah, and clearly, I mean, to get back to the story of it, it happened because you guys surpassed 10 or 15 million. Very quickly, it started to get press coverage from a lot of people, including myself when I was still back at Yahoo. Like the idea of this becoming real.
Yeah.
You guys raised, I think, heading into the auction more than $40 million, if I have the number right. And then talk to me about how you're feeling going into it, because the day finally came.
Right. So we actually never got final approval from Sotheby's until a few hours before the auction to actually participate. And so everything was down to the wire. We weren't sure if they were going to give us the final thumbs up, which would have been soul crushing to have raised all this money, gathered everyone together, and then not actually be able to bid. So everyone was definitely on edge. There was also a really big last minute kink that kind of caused us a couple problems, is that we'd raised money denominated in Ethereum.
Yeah. And
the day of, Sotheby's got a little bit nervous and said, they're kind of like, we want it in USD if you're going to bid on this thing, because the price of ETH had declined about 17% that week. And they're like, what if they bid and the price plummets and they can't pay us for whatever they've bid on?
Yeah.
So they made a request that was different than what our original terms of agreement were. And so we actually had to find a counterparty to agree to swap into dollars right beforehand. So this is all happening day of, adding to all the chaos.
Yeah. And so you go into the auction itself, and if I remember correctly, there was Brooke and another guy at Sotheby's,
David Schrader,
on the phones, manning the lines.
Yep.
As this is all playing out in real time, but no one really knows who's who in terms of where's ConstitutionDAO's bid coming.
This was tricky. So we'd been given pretty clear directions from Sotheby's. Don't tell people who's bidding on your behalf. I kind of thought it was a little bit silly because everyone knows how much money we have anyway. This isn't particularly hidden, but they said don't tell anyone who's bidding on your behalf. And for some reason, the internet collectively decided that Brooke, who's particularly expressive, was definitely the person representing us instead of David.
Yeah. And then it plays out. I think CoinDesk reported at the time that you guys won the Constitution, so people were celebrating. I think there are a few Coinage members who are watching this play out in real time, elated, thinking that we won the Constitution.
Yep.
But alas, victory was snatched.
Yeah.
From the hands of the people.
Yeah. Well, and the point of confusion was this, is we'd raise about $45-ish million worth of Ethereum, right? There's price fluctuation, so it depends on when you want to count it. But there's two things that decreased our bidding power a little bit. One of them was we had to exchange for USDC. And then the second one was that we had to bake in like an extra buffer of money for auction house fees.
Yeah.
You know, most people don't see this behind the scenes, but whatever you bid, you actually have to pay more money on top of that, and that money goes to Sotheby's. So we had basically, as a team, backed into the numbers and said, what's the max bid that we have? Publicly, people just said, oh, they've got $45 million. So when the final bid comes in, everyone goes, it must be them. They must have won.
Because it was at 45 or like close to it.
And I forget what the exact number. I think the final paying amount that Ken Griffin paid was like $43.2 million.
Yeah, you beat me to it that Ken Griffin, the CEO of Citadel, is the man who beat you guys, which is somewhat fitting because he's a figure that always keeps coming up. He came up during the GameStop saga in terms of the Robinhood, Memecoin, retail versus billionaire mega rich guy. And then he comes up again with you guys in ConstitutionDAO. And now it's kind of interesting because Citadel also recently said they want to get into market making in crypto.
Isn't that funny?
4 years later, it's kind of like this constant like theme that just keeps coming back up and coming back up. But for you too, I mean, what was that like after he beat you guys at auction? Because then there was this weird spat back and forth between like him and ConstitutionDAO in public.
Well, so we heard the news at the same time the rest of the public did. I think it was Wall Street Journal broke it that it was Ken Griffin who was the bidder behind Brooke Lampley. Yeah. And you can't take it as anything else other than like kind of a gut punch. Yeah. I mean, at the time he was already a little bit like, you know, the villain of the internet, you know, the antagonist behind, you know, GameStop and everything. So it was kind of like almost like you had to be like a movie writer, right? Writing this stuff, right? And so it was just really tough to handle. There was actually a little bit conversation that happened between us and his team afterwards, though, where he had reached out to he's got kind of a right-hand guy, and he's kind of his handler, this dude named Kaysen, who'd reached out to us and said, you know, we want to have a conversation. So we were kind of like, awesome. You know, if he's thinking what we're thinking, we'd love to raise the difference between what you bid and what we have. And we'd love to pay you for it and explain, you know, what we're doing, why this is an amazing democratic movement, why we'd love to have the people, large democratic movement, kind of in control and have governance of this amazing historic document. That was my idea going into it. Yeah. And he's kind of like, oh, well, you know, congratulations, it was a great effort. That's not going to work. Ken wants the document. And we're like, ah, shoot. He goes, but we got a great idea for you. We can give you what you really wanted. The right to mint a digital version, an NFT of the Constitution. And we kind of looked at each other like, what the heck? Yeah. That's not what we wanted at all. Yeah. I think there was just a tremendous misunderstanding about what we were trying to do and what this whole thing was from the onset. So it was really unfortunate that, you know, we were just on very different pages there.
You could call it a misunderstanding. Some might call it a disrespect that like the idea of like retail owners coming together wouldn't want like authentic real ownership over what they're bidding on. Yeah. But I think it kind of speaks directly to, you know, how far the space has drifted from like ownership, what it would have meant then. Yeah. What the Ken Griffins of the world probably think ownership means to most people. Right. In crypto. And then the idea of like what it means today. And I guess that's kind of what sparked in my head the idea of looking back on ConstitutionDAO to think about, you know, how different the space is 4 years later. And I wonder if you've had any like time to reflect after all that plays out. And maybe we're skipping one important piece of this too, which is what you actually do with the money after you say, we don't want to take your deal, Mr. Billionaire.
Right. So after we say, you know, we don't want this deal. It doesn't make sense. The core team of ConstitutionDAO made a commitment to people from the onset, and we were working extremely fast to follow through to say 100% refunds are going to be available to every single person who put money into this project. It's the only sensible thing. It's the ethical thing to do. It's also deeply unusual in the crypto world for people to say this project didn't work well, take all of your money back.
Yes.
But I think it
basically hasn't happened, I think, since.
Yeah. But it's, I think, extremely important, and it's, part of the ethos of the project. We didn't have any cut. There was no pre-mint. There was no pre-mine. There was no fees or anything. It was just, here's a project, and we would like the community to be involved. So it didn't work out. Take back your money.
Yeah.
And so we put all the money back in the smart contract, enabled refunds, which lets you take back refunds 100%. The only thing that you have to pay is gas fees, which obviously we have no control over, and that's exactly what we did. And after that, we rescinded ownership of the contract, which means we can't mint any more coins, we can't take the underlying money, we can't reallocate it for something else. Truly, the only thing you can do is take your refund to go home. That's what we shared with people, and that's what we announced. And then this really weird thing happened. People, as expected, started redeeming their tokens, and this means that the token supply goes down.
Yeah.
And the way the laws of physics in crypto works is as token supply goes down, people just look at that and they go, price must go up.
Yeah.
And so people started bidding up the price of this thing. And it's not rational, it's not explicable. I can't really explain why that was happening, but within an extremely short period of time, this thing is worth hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah, no, it was pretty crazy to watch. And again, as me, who put in $250, I think at one point I was sitting there going like, okay, I put in $250. Somehow on paper, I now have I think 2,000 or more. And I was like, okay, whatever happened to People Token, I guess I'm fine with.
Yeah.
But to me, I almost walked away with this idea of you could group together any number of people, doesn't really matter how many. And depending on who the people are and how much money they have, you could, in that group wallet, have $45 million. But on top of that, the IP that came along with the story of what happened at ConstitutionDAO, the piece of community and example it showed, all of those things added up to more than just $45 million sitting in a group account.
Yeah.
And that, I thought, was the really cool takeaway was somehow more value was created than just money going into this account. I don't know if that's your main reflection after 4 years or not, but what I guess is, how does Graham think about it 4 years later?
I think the part that I was most excited about was the fact that we demonstrated that the edge of whatever we thought was possible with individual communities on the internet was actually way greater, right? The smart contract was only open for about 3 days. This is tens of millions of dollars for a collective purpose. And I think everyone was like, wow, what does that mean for the future of coordinating people, coordinating organizations, for funding public goods or funding projects? And I think that we all kind of had this sense of this is really game changing, and this is just the beginning. Which leads to the second thing, which was, literally hundreds of DAOs launched after ConstitutionDAO, many in the exact same style, some with variations, other with different types of purposes, some for buying things, some for operating things. There are golf courses, and people were buying books and rare items and things left and right. And it was kind of cool to see this kind of proliferation of new models and things. But if I were, being honest, now 3.5, almost 4 years later, I think a little bit disappointed that we didn't actually see more innovation.
Yeah.
That I think I expected that there was going to be oh, we're going to run this way and this way and this way. And a lot of people were just copy and paste it.
Yeah.
Let's do the same thing again. And I'd be the first to say there's 10 different things I would have done differently, Yeah.
But it was the one that people saw, and it was the one that worked, at least getting there. And getting there is half the battle.
Yeah.
You made it to the auction. And so I feel if you were to copy any model, that might be the one. And I think it's interesting because that also brings us here today with what Coinage is now going to attempt to try and do, which we'll get into in a second. But before we do, I feel again, it did inspire not just copies, but even for me personally, the idea of what you guys showed was possible, I think really did trigger, for the first time, people waking up to the idea of oh, this is Web3. You could take on a Goliath of the financial world as me and a bunch of other people who threw in, I think the average contribution was close to $250 or something. So my story, I think that's right. I don't know if that's right or wrong.
Yeah, the median contribution was in the hundreds of dollars.
And so that's pretty crazy. And it was, again, kind of fitting that kind of same thing happened with GameStop, and it was Ken Griffin then, and it's Ken Griffin again here. And now here we are again, almost 4 years later, and Citadel's getting into crypto market making. But all of that to say, now I'm curious about what you think of meme coins, because if you squint your eyes, you can kind of say maybe meme coins are the same thing in terms of, can you bring a community together? At least that's what's been pitched. Can you bring a community together? Can you raise money together, if you want to call it that? Can you like create community online using tokens? And I'm just kind of curious, as you've watched this play out, what your thoughts are on kind of the differences between what you did then and meme coins now.
Yeah. I would say inside me, there are two wolves, Zach. So the first wolf is the one that wants to see productive projects, who wants to see cool things built, and sees a lot of frustrating actions, activities that feel zero sum. They feel ups and downs and whipsaws, and there's really nothing productive about them. And it's, I think, really frustrating, and in some senses just like confusing, like, why is this happening and how is this explicable? And the second wolf inside of me recognizes this is going to happen no matter what. This is, Pandora's box is opened. People like speculation, and meme coins as a thing to discuss, to talk about, and for people to play, engage, and interact with, it's not going away at all. And so these things are going to be out here forever. So while it's not maybe my preferred means, and it's not something that I've, ConstitutionDAO's token floating and going to the moon and whatever else was a complete accident. We didn't plan to do that. And I can't say I ever plan to launch another meme coin ever again. But they're not going away. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I mean, I do know what you're saying, because it's been weird to watch even like Anatoly talk about meme coins and the idea of like price and value are two very different things.
Yeah.
And it's like over time, most meme coins, the price of them does go to zero.
Oh, yeah,
because
for
their
sure.
value is zero. But it's an interesting like kind of distinction there between like what's the value of something and what's the price of it.
Yes.
And I guess you guys kind of played that out on the stage at Sotheby's with everybody, because it is an auction. It's, I don't know, the price estimation was like 10 to 15 million first, and then it took 40 to beat you guys out. For Ken to beat you guys out. And so
there's an interesting question under all of this, which is, what is the value, or what's the price of something, right? Is it whatever Sotheby's says the Constitution's worth? Is it what Ken Griffin says it's worth? Is it what thousands of people on the internet thinks it's worth? And I suppose the thing that crypto is doing with tokenization of these things is essentially creating markets so that a market is deciding it. It's probably not a single individual.
Yeah, and that at least in theory, if you believe in like the efficient market hypothesis, is the more convenient way to do it.
Seeing meme coins might make me more skeptical of the effective market hypothesis.
Fair point. But it does bring me to a very interesting segue. As we have something, yes, we have this bad boy here, the YouTube Creator Award, very important.
Okay, wait, so say a little bit more about this.
Yeah, so this bad boy, which we haven't even opened yet because, I can't even bring myself to do it. We've worked so hard to get this. Every time you cross 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, you're entitled to you've earned a little silver plaque.
Oh, very cool.
Will be going up on the old trophy mantle over here.
Wonderful.
But I physically can't accept ownership of this because this is Coinage's award. This is of the DAO, as you know, as a member now, elected, by the way.
Thank you very much.
That we are a community-owned show, so anyone can co-own Coinage with us. And so it's, again, one of those things where it's like, even though it's here on our shelf, I don't own this thing. It's part of the DAO's. And the question then becomes well, how do we even handle that, right? Kind of like what I think you guys probably navigated too, which was well, where are we going to put this Constitution even if we win it?
Right.
Which was an open question. And I think what you guys try to do with your own token, the idea would be vote to figure out where we put this thing.
Yeah.
And very similar here is okay, we've won this thing, we've earned it. It technically cost us $0 because YouTube gives you this thing, but because so many people care about this, people record videos unboxing this, which we will do, but
I want, if you do an unboxing video, I want it that high quality ASMR close-up style, or maybe we do it right here, Zach.
Yeah, that's nice.
Well, yeah, there you go.
But no, I mean this is something that people cry over, and you can't buy it, you have to earn it, and so the question becomes, what is the value of it, and what is the price of it? I guess is kind of an experiment that we want to run and figure out. But I'd ask you, Graham, as someone who's gone through this before, like what to be aware of?
Oh boy. Well, there's a lot more. Well, in our case, there's a lot of lawyers involved. I'm not sure what your process is going to look like. But
there have been, by the way.
Oh, I'm sure. So when we were doing ConstitutionDAO, we were talking to lawyers left and right, and we discussed 3 different possible legal structures. And there's questions about how it fits in with securities laws and how people are allowed to contribute and what has to or can be done. And so that's kind of like the very first thing that comes to mind.
I mean, we've definitely done that. But in terms of now where we go from here is a very interesting question around meme coins. Historically, when they launch, you're like trading on pump fun.
Right.
People have sniped them. We covered that with Malay's coin. The president of Argentina comes out, launches his own thing. Price booms, busts, everyone gets pissed. And that didn't happen with ConstitutionDAO, despite the fact of so many people knowing about it for those short 10 days. Mm-hmm. And now it happens all the time. And so we want to do it in a way that's not going to be that. And so there's a couple things out there that we're exploring. But like, again, it kind of goes back to the idea of have we lost our way around the idea of community ownership over something versus like buying a token because you want it to moon.
So if I'm understanding correctly, you guys want to launch a token that represents fractional ownership of this award that the community has collectively earned.
Yes, and to be specific, YouTube's terms of service, if I may, very specific that you cannot resell this thing, and in no way are we trying to resell this thing.
Okay,
it's not for sale. I want to be very clear about that because it's Coinage's DAO's property now.
Okay.
We've won this thing. We've earned it. And so we're never going to sell it. You have to pry this from our collective cold, dead hands, I would say. But it is an open question of how do you share something like this, a physical object, with a community? And you've done that once before. And so that's essentially what we're trying to do. And I know that the value of it, as someone who has now earned it, is not $0.
Yeah.
Even though the price technically is. And so if I think about it, it's almost an experiment in reverse to what we've seen from most meme coins, which is over a long enough time horizon, they all scale to 0 in price. But what would happen if we take something that's value is definitely not 0 and try and put it on a chart, if that makes sense?
I've never thought about a project that starts at 0 and then only increases. But like there's this concept that comes to my mind, which is that you already have a community right now. And there's some semblance of tokenization already, right? There's NFT holders, so individual members that are all part of this community. So you know who's out there and how many members there are, right?
Yep.
So if you take the concept of them starting at 0, you could mint some type of proportional ownership to each of those people that all starts at 0. You could theoretically see what happens. Now, it might stay at 0. It might go to the moon. Who am I to say? But I don't think that particular experiment has been run before.
Yeah, I don't think it has either. And I also don't know. I mean, like the one key differentiator, by the way, between this and what you guys tried to do is there was no looming auction.
Sure.
There was no like call to action to take on.
We benefited from the fact that there was a very distinct, explicit timeline, a deadline of you either join or we lose this thing, right?
Yeah. Which, to be fair, most meme coins don't have that either, I guess.
Right.
There's never, I mean, they're capitalizing on like a strict timeline of attention.
Yep.
Because like the news cycle comes and goes. You had Peanut the Squirrel. That thing, people only care about that for so long. So it's like there is a timeline, but very rarely do you see like something so powerful. And I know a YouTube Creator Award isn't necessarily as strong as the Constitution, but like something like that, where it's like, do we want to all come together to co-own something? To your point, anyone can co-own Coinage as an outlet, which I think is pretty cool. Different than what we're trying to do, but similar in terms of tokenizing something.
So I had a way of testing my thesis before we actually even sent a single ETH to the smart contract. Mm-hmm. And this was a very rough kind of back of napkin way of doing it. But I'd written a one-pager, and I started sharing with people who I thought would be interested, who wanted to be involved. And this was me and Austin largely DMing people on Twitter who I thought were involved in crypto, who were investors, who were people who would be interested in this type of project. And we got actually a very good signal. And the signal we were looking for was, is this something that they are interested in, and more importantly, want to go tell a friend about, is that for us, there was kind of this sense of like a virality coefficient. And there's a formula for virality. It's like the same thing way that like a virus spreads, but it's the same way that, you know, a video goes viral or in a concept spreads. And my anecdotes from all my conversations were, I tell someone about it and they go, this is cool. Let me go send this to 3 other people. And it meant that there was like enough virality that we were going to have kind of like a successful project. And so the thesis that you might have might end up being different, but I suppose that the question might be, what's the thing that you would put to the community, or who's the people that you'd be interested in to say, hey, you know, what do you think of this thing? And that might be the question I ask.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that that's definitely where we started with this, because there are, again, people who are excited about this idea in particular, because Coinage doesn't have a token outside of our NFTs that let people co-own the outlet, but nothing quite like this. Nothing with something quite like a YouTube silver play button. And so, I don't know, it's very much an experiment like that too. But putting our own thing aside, if I would step back and just also kind of ask you too, in terms of other creators out there now who might be deep in the trenches trying to launch their own meme coin too, like that word, even meme coin, has kind of gotten bastardized a little bit in terms of even Javier Malay's coin wasn't really a meme coin. There's no meme attached to it in the same way that, like, I don't know how many of these coins are technically meme coins. And the SEC just put out an alert saying, like, meme coins are fair game. They're not really like securities. And so, like, that's new.
You see, I'd take the other side of it. It's not so much that it has been bastardized, but actually that's been clarified. And by clarified, I mean anyone who participates in a meme coin knows it's entirely speculation.
Yeah.
If someone says, I'm launching this meme coin, no one's expecting to receive dividends 2 and 3 years from now from the hard work and labor of other people, right? That's what you buy a stock for.
Yes.
People are buying it because they're degenerative, speculative gamblers. That's why they're buying it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that that's why they've existed, because people thought that that was the only type of coin that was fair game and not going to get attacked by the SEC under Gensler for such a long time.
Yeah.
And now for them to come out and like say like, hey, look, meme coins are fair game because they don't promise any of that, is kind of like, yeah, we already know. That's why there are so many of these goddamn things.
Right.
And so it's, I don't know, it's kind of interesting now to see, you know, even under a pro-crypto administration, like why meme coins are still the thing. But
yeah,
it seems to be fading now. And I think it's fading now because maybe the hypothesis, to your point, like the idea of community being built around these things, has not really been the best way to go. At least from what I've seen, hasn't been the case. Sounds like you would agree with that.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, that they don't really build community. But anyways, in regards to everything else, Graham, as you kind of look back, and as you build something new, by the way, which we haven't talked about, which is Mezzanine Labs, building tools for DAOs such as us at Coinage, for other projects out there to kind of operate this and run on-chain effectively, what's kind of been the big learning curve there?
I'd say that there's a few big learnings, and part of it is that there's a lot of infrastructure that has to exist in order to really operate and manage things on chain.
Yeah.
So one is like, you know, governance, right? Everyone was talking about when we did ConstitutionDAO, how's the DAO going to decide what to do? And there's a series of governance contracts that are out there, which is decision making that you use tokens to vote, and it's a really clear, transparent way of guaranteeing that certain decisions get done.
Yeah.
And the second thing is like, you know, how do you spend and use money? So if you pull together a bunch of money somewhere, how do you choose where that goes or how it gets used in some capacity? And I think those are big question marks that weren't really widely answered. This is also part of the reason why you see hacks and exploits is, you know, things aren't being custodied well, and, you know, people are, you know, just holding all of their money in a single, you know, address or something. And so it gets, it's been complicated. And when we did ConstitutionDAO in 2021, there was no good infrastructure, or very, very little infrastructure that existed. I mean, right now, when people are transacting, they're using L2s, and they're paying fractions of a cent or cents to pay for things or to transact. For people to contribute money into ConstitutionDAO smart contract, Juicebox, in 2021, people were paying upwards of $40, $50, $60 to contribute because gas fees were high and the price of ETH was high.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And that's not scalable, and that's not sensible. And so we had to see many technical innovations, which included upgrades to Ethereum's protocol, as well as scaling architecture that have brought all the costs down dramatically. So just costs and basic infrastructure, that's part of it.
Yeah.
And the second part is, how do I see it? How do I interact with it? There were L2s at the time, but it was very difficult to bridge to them, right? We had to try to describe to someone, well, here's how you buy money on Coinbase and then transfer it to Ethereum. And
I remember, there was like that like kind of tailored walkthrough on the site.
Absolutely.
Which we also had to do the same thing.
Right.
But
it's crypto is still a horrific user experience, and it's going to continue to be a major pain point for adoption until we make major strides, period.
Yeah, and that's what you're now doing at Mezzanine in terms of helping everyone manage these things, run them more efficiently, and building all these tools that I think make it way simpler for founders.
People should not have to think about what network they're on or which type of wallet they're using or what public address or verify hex code in a wallet. People shouldn't have to deal with that.
Yeah.
People want a smooth, slick, enjoyable user experience that feels like all the financial products they've been using for the last 10 years.
Yeah. No, I think it's definitely needed, first of all. And second of all, I hope something that more people discover and find as you guys continue to scale it, because I feel like it hopefully will supercharge, I think, a lot of the pain points that I'm sure ConstitutionDAO ran into. There's a lot of the pain points that like Coinage has run into as being a DAO, and eventually if that tooling is there, no kind of, I guess, stopping kind of the idea of bringing together more people to run some of this on chain, which I guess is the goal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the whole goal for Mezzanine is to put the power in people's hands, give people globally accessible, low-cost tools for being able to store and custody their organization's assets, and to be able to use them the way any organization might. Whether you're a business or you're a nonprofit, you're a DAO, you should be able to store and manage these things. And in some ways, right, if I were going back to the Constitution, I'd say this is a freedom of assembly. Is that freedom of assembly is not just bringing people together, but it's the right for an organization to be able to hold assets and to do money, to do things with that money, right?
Somewhat full circle moment to think about too, in terms of bidding on a constitution and all of that. If it is attached to freedom of assembly. I like the way that we've closed the loop on that one. But Graham, can't thank you enough, man. I mean, on a personal level, can't thank you enough for what you did with ConstitutionDAO, what you're building now, for coming out here, and for being a part of what we're building now at Coinage as well. But
absolutely. I'm so excited to see the future of Coinage. And I have to say personally, I mean, the most moving things for me after ConstitutionDAO were seeing that there were legitimate, serious projects wanting to change ownership models and operation models, wanting to use these new technologies to empower their communities, to have more interesting, distribution models. And that to me is super cool. And you're at the cutting edge of that, for having a community who gets to be a part of the decision making and part of the ownership model. And you guys have broken ground with actually having some of the first paid dividends for any type of media DAO, right?
Yeah,
That's a huge first.
Thank you very much, man. Yeah, and, I wouldn't be here without what you guys did, to be honest. I'd still be at Yahoo. I'd still be hanging out there doing my show probably. Instead, we're out here trying to pioneer community-owned media, and so thank you, I guess, is the way that I wrap this up, because I'd still be in that anchor seat over there, and now we've got our own studio out here. So thank you very much, because I think you pioneered what community ownership should be, can be, and hopefully we can take the mantle or the torch and run with it from here. But we'll see what happens.
Excited to see it.
But thank you so much for coming out, man.
Appreciate you having me.
Yeah.